Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good, and God is good all the time. My name is Army J. Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. Galilee defeat the Midianites. We're going to come from Judges chapter 7, verse 1 to 25. Now, Galilee will get ready for battle, but God will say, he have too many men. So early in the morning, Galilee and his men camped at the spring of Harod. Midianites was north of them in the valley near the hill. So the Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. So God said he cannot deliver them into your hands. Now he think by his own strength. Him and his men think by their own strength, that they saved themselves. They think they always win. So that's why they was getting ready for battle with all these men because they feel like they're winning on their own strength. And we can't win or do anything on our own strength. It's always God's power and God's strength. That's just like Moses. Moses thought he was just hitting a rock and having the water come out. That was his big mistake. Was he gonna tell the Israelites, we about to give you some water. Sit on knowledge God power, because and that's what God in his meant is. They're talking about with their strength. They thought they could just go out there and win. Figured they always win and thought they was winning on their own strength and they were winning with God power. So it's impossible to think that we could do what we need to be done in our own strength. We can't. To prevent this attitude among airline soldiers, God gonna test them to show them that you cannot win on your own strength. Cause they had 22,000 of men with them. God gonna break all that down. So now he announced to the army, anyone who tremble with fear may turn back and leave. And while 10,000 had remained, 10,000 remained. Some had left and went home. So God reduced their numbers with an army this large, outnumbered. They could not doubt that the victory was God. And see what God gonna do. God gonna break their numbers down, cause they figure they gotta go out there with all those men, and they said they're winning on their own strength. Oh, we got this. We can go out there. We be winning on our own strength. So God about to break this down. And about to let them know you're not winning nothing on your own strength. So the army of this lost outnumbers, there could be no doubt that victory was from God. So this way the men could not take the credit. They try to take credit like Moses did. This way the men could not take credit like Gideon. We must recognize that the danger of fighting in our own strength, you will lose. That's just like David. David didn't go out there in his own strength. David said, I'm going out there in the name of the Lord. And so instead of them and their men saying, in the power of God, they're saying, no, we going out there in our own strength, because we always win. We going to take all these men with us and we going to win. So God don't like how they talking like that, so God about to break it down. You can't be confident of victory against the challenges and temptation only if we have confidence in God, not ourselves. That's just like David. David had confidence in himself. David had confidence in God that he gonna go out there and God gonna give him the courage and the power to win that big giant. Without God power, he would not beat that big giant down. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Remember some of them had went home, but 10,000 stayed. God said there's still too many. So take them down to the water, and then God will let you know which ones stay and which one can go home. So if I say this one, should go with you, he should go. But if I say this one should go with you and he should not go, so God gonna make that decision. So Gideon followed God's order, and the other men went down to the water, and the Lord told him separate those, the like the water with their tongue as a dog lap from those that kneel down. So God about to separate this. He said the ones that lap like a dog, you know, still are the ones, buy down to drink. So some people buy down to drink, but he want them to lap like a dog, licking the water like a dog. So now we see that God is giving instruction, how he gonna pick Galilean men who would go out for battle. So 300 of them, 300 had drank like God said, lapping, drinking and lapping like a dog. All the rest had got down on their knees and drank. And God said, do not get on the knees. He said, lap like a dog and drink the water. So it was three of them following instruction. And the rest of them had to go home. So Gideon got to fight against a whole army. And so God gonna have him only with 300 men to go out there and fight. So we want to see if he's still gonna talk about he gonna win in his own strength. So the Lord said again, with the 300 men that left, I will save you and give you the Midianites into the hands and let all the others go home. So he told them, let the rest of them go home. I'm gonna keep the 300, and they're gonna go with us to war. So then he sent the rest the Israelite home, but kept the 300 who took the provision of the trumpet. And now the camp of the Midianites lay below him in the valley. So ready for battle. Now see, they was getting ready for battle until God had to stop them. Because see, God heard the conversation that was done. See, God can hear everything. They getting ready for war. Had what, 10? They had 22,000 of men. And since God hearing them talking about they always win with their own strength, God had to stop them. We got to stop this right now. I'm about to separate these here. You about to bring 300 men out there. So God trying to, she said, they're taking credit of God's power. And they thinking they was winning on their own strength. So Gideon army of 32, it was 32 men facing enemy of proportion in strength. But Gideon bravely moved forward until God stopped it. Him and tell him he has too many soldiers. So Gideon obeyed God and tell all his men, if you scared, you could go home and leave. So they had a whole lot of them left, but still had 10,000 remain. So God said that 10,000 still too many. Still too many. So 907 are out through the river bend. And I God about to test them. So now he left with 300 soldiers to fight. Remember, the Israelites thought they can win with their own strength. So God is testing them to see if they're going to get credit of taking 300 men to fight. Knowing you cannot win with 300 men and you going against a whole army. So that's a way of God going to let them know you cannot win if you ain't got God on your side helping you fight your battle. So God wants to be sure the Israelites get the lesson. He want to make sure they get this lesson, and get it crystal clear. God said, I want you to get this crystal clear, that you is not going to win the whole army with 300 men. You're going to win, but it's going to be with God's power. And they have to recognize, we all have to recognize, we cannot win or do anything on our own strength. So God letting them know that 300 men can never conquer a huge army unless you got God right there by your side. God is the only one can conquer a whole army with just himself. So the Israelite victory had nothing to do with their strength. A number, everything have to do with God's power and love. And the power and love that work today, conquering enemy, is too big for us. It's too big and powerful for us to handle. So that's why we always got to call out on God for God to step in. Because if we try to do on our own strength and think we can beat a whole army, we gonna always lose. So during that night, The Lord said to Gideon, get up and go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. So if you're afraid, see, God can test your heart, your mind, your soul. So God know He's a little nervous, and He a little afraid, because if He talking about going, God said you going down there and fight this battle, and you gonna fight this battle with 300 men. So now He all shaking up. So He know He cannot win a whole army with 300 people. It gonna be with God's strength and power. you know. So God know He afraid. So God said, if you're afraid to go and attack, to go down the camp, So God said, you go down with your servants. You go down with your servant, and then you will be encouraged, to attack the camp. And then Gideon and his servant went down outpost the camp. So God want them to go down, where you gonna be fighting at, and spy on them and hear what they're saying. And that way, whatever they're saying, you'll be encouraged and you'll be able to go and fight your battle. So he facing overwhelming, where God said, if you are afraid, go down, you and your own servant. So God understood his fear, but he didn't excuse the Gideon. He didn't excuse him. He didn't say, you go home. He said, you go down. You go down. Instead, he allowed him to slip into the enemy camp, to overhear the conversation that will give him courage. Because, God wanted him to have courage, because God felt that he was a little afraid. So when Gideon realized that he cannot do this with his own strength, he began to obey God and find courage to move ahead. So see, God know how to test you. God know how to get you where He wants you to get you at. Because they were just bragging on themselves. Giving themselves credit. So we got all our men. We always win with our own strength. Never give God no credit, saying they went on their own strength. But now, since he realized he cannot, win with 300 people on his own strength, he began to obey God and find courage to move ahead. So that's, see, God know how to encourage you. God know how to get him straight. Because God said, y'all gonna get this lesson. So the Midianites, the Ammonites, and all other eastern people had settled in the valley. So they had so many camels, they could no more count them in the sand of the seashore. So Gideon arrived just as the men was telling, they had someone was telling somebody their dream. And the dream was saying a round loaf of bread that came tumbling into the Midianites' camp, and it struck the tent, with such a force that the tent had overturned and collapsed. So that was the person's dream. So enemy soldier dream of a loaf of bread that must be a big old heavy bread, it tumbling into the camp. Israel tiny band of men was considered lower in rank, against the advanced forces of the Midianites and the Canaanites, But God will make this underdog. You see, the Israelite, was the underdog, because they had 300 men. God did that on purpose. Y'all only going out there with 300 men. So they call the Israelite underdog. Call them the underdog. But God will make the underdog, the Israelite, seem powerful to defeat with only 300 men. See, God could do the impossible. He could do the impossible. He could take 300 men against 10,000 men that they have, and they will still win. They calling the Israelite underdogs right now because they just have 300 men. But God said, I'm going to take this underdog Israelite, and they will win. Because God can take the impossible. It's impossible for 300 men to win, but with God, anything impossible that God can, nothing impossible that God cannot do. So a friend responded that this can be nothing other than a sword of Gideon, the Israelite. Now God had given the Midianites the whole camp into his hands. So then he heard the dream. Gideon heard the dream and interpretation that he bowed down in worship. And he returned to the camp of Israel and um, called out God's name. So the Lord had given the Midianites camp into his hands. Dividing the 300 men. So they divide the 300 men into 300 companies. So he placed trumpets, empty jars, in the hand of all of them with torches inside. So he said, watch me. And he told them and followed his lead. So when I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly what I say. All who go up, and when he get to the edge of the camp, he said, blow that trumpet. All around the camp, blow your trumpet and shout. Shout for the Lord and shout for Gideon. So Gideon and 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle of the watch, and they blew the trumpet, broke the jar. Remember, they had empty jars in their hand, broke the jar what was in their hands. So the night they divided equally into 3 watches, the beginning of the middle. The 3 company blew the trumpet, and they in their hands with the jaws in their right hand, the trumpet, and they blow the trumpet for the Lord. So the 300 turned into 300 companies, and they blow the trumpet. They blow the trumpet holding their right hand, the trumpet, and they were blowing and they were shouting, before they entered to fight battle. So shout to the Lord. 300 soldiers with torches in their hand, empty jars in their hand, trumpets, making noise, shouting. So the soldier holds up in their position and to blow their trumpet and break jars and swords for the Lord, for the Galilee. No doubt. So God said, no doubt, the victor was not the Israelite. God said in the soldiers, he said, it is not Galilee. So Galilee and the Israelite did not make victory. The victor is the Lord and God. Now, while each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites, rallied, crying out as they flee. Now, see, sometimes you ain't even got to touch your enemy. God can have them confused. They ain't even had to use no weapon on them. They just start getting in confusion and they start fighting among themselves and they just flee. And Israel, they ain't even had to do nothing, but 2 of the leaders that they really want had got away, and they gonna go behind them and get them and bring them to Galilee. So simply watch as the Midianites fell into panic. They was confused. Not one man had to draw a sword. Not one had to use any kind of weapon to defeat their enemy. So Galilee's small army, 300 men, could never have brought about such a victory, in their own strength. So that's what God had to use. God had to show them. Y'all gonna talk about you have this big army, that y'all fight and win on your own strength. God said, okay, I'm about to break this down to 300. I want to see you got that kind of strength that you're gonna win with 300 people without God. So they never brought about such a victory in their own strength. God wanted to demonstrate to the Israelites that victories depend not on their strength or numbers. Because they thought if they have all the men, they're automatically going to win. And they always did win. So they thought they was winning on their own strength. So God said, God had to demonstrate to the Israel, victory depend not on your strength, not in numbers, but obedience to commit to God. To allow God to fight their battle, and give God the credit. So when the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other. And so, see, that's how God do. God have your enemies fighting among themselves. A lot of times they get into it and I'm saying, didn't they used to be cool? So God had them fighting among themselves. They're just so confused. They're in panic. Because you got the Israelite, a small army, 300 people coming in there marching, with their chest sticking out, ready for war. And so they just, God got them confused, got them panicking, they fussing among themselves, and they just flee. So the army had flee towards far as the border near Terry. So sometimes you don't have to do anything because God will make your enemy fight among themselves. Have them in confusion. So the Israelites called out and they pursued the Midianites. Galilee sent messengers throughout the hill country, and they captured the main two that they wanted, that fleet. They caught them. That was the leader, and they killed them at the rock. So they pursued the Midianites and brought their head. Now they killed them, took their head off, brought their head to Galilee, who was by the Jordan River. So we see that God broke down Galilee men to 300 because he thought he have all them men that he was fighting and winning on his own strength. So God had to break that down to 300. I want to see if you're gonna win on your own strength with 300 men. So by he had 300 men, what he did, he got scared. He was panicking, and God felt his fear. So God told him, if you scared to fight your enemy with 300 men, you go down there and go spy and see what they're saying. Maybe that'll give you some courage to go and attack them. So we see that God brought down his men to 300, against a whole army they had to fight. So that was God's test. He tested them because they thought they was winning all the time with all the men. He had 32 men. And this time he was going out to battle with all the men. That's why God said you cannot win your own strength. You cannot win with a whole lot of men. All you need in the name of the Lord, to go out there and fight your battle. And sometimes you need just on the Lord and yourself to go just like David. David just had himself. But he went out there not confidence of himself, not in his own strength. He went out there in the name of the Lord. He didn't need all that stuff out. He know that God was going to protect him. When you got confidence in God, and allow God to fight your battle. David went out there. He said, and Saul said, "Was you going out there?" He took all them weapons off. All he needed was his slingshot in the name of the Lord. All his confidence was in God. So God let them go out with 300 men against a whole army to let them know that you cannot win on your own strength. 300 men. You win on God's strength. When you have 1,000 men, God said you don't need 1,000 men. You don't need 10,000 men. You cannot win on your own strength. You cannot always think you winning because you have 32,000 men. You win on God's strength, God's power. So now they know with God, you can go against a whole army only with 300 men. So God wants them to stop saying that you always win on your own strength. We cannot do nothing on our own strength. Nothing. With God, without God, we cannot do anything. We cannot do anything. You can't go and stand up against no one if you don't have God, in your life and on your side. So we cannot have victory, in our own strength, but God's strength. But God's strength. So that's the story of Gideon. He was the one that saved the Israelites. Yesterday when I put that out, God kept on bringing people to save them. And once they die, the Israelites go back sinning and doing whatever they want to do. Then they cried out for God for a leader. And so now he is their leader right now. He is their leader right now over the Israelites. And every time they go to war, he go out of war with 20 and 32,000 men. And he every time they went, he think he was doing that on his own strength. We cannot do anything on our own strength. We might think, we might think we did this and did that. God always worked behind the scene. That you remember 2 practices ago. God had left them, the Israelite, alone because they refused to obey Him. But then He had got judges to help them, and God was working behind the scene, um, working with the judges, still protecting the Israelite when they didn't know. So they was winning and thought God left them, and but otherwise God did not left them. God could give them the judges, and God was helping the judges to make sure the Israelites were protected, because God still cared for them. So that's all the story I have for you on tonight. And this is a good lesson that we cannot do anything on our own strength. All our strength and confidence come from the Lord. We put all our strength, all our confidence into the Lord. We cannot do anything by ourselves. 'Cause without God, you cannot. God showed that to the Israelites. When God left them, the first time, and they had to go out there and fight, they lost. They was defeated. And Joshua was so worried about their name. Well, we got a powerful name. How they gonna get all over the town that we got defeated? God, we need you. And that's when Joshua had to get face down on the ground. And he had to pray to God for a long time to come back into our life. We had to pray for God to come back in our life. Because once He leaves, you cannot win. Israel now lost. So God came back into their life the next day, and they defeated the enemy, and conquered their land. So that's all I have for y'all tonight. Y'all have a blessed night, and I see y'all on the next video.